But obviously, if you contemplate, first of all, with the logic that God granted us, God with the capital G, you would say the following. Well, here we are on this planet called Earth by us, and intelligent life evolved here, according to the Sumerians, helped along a little by the Anunnaki from Nibiru, but there was evolution, which is, by the way, described very scientifically in the first chapter of Genesis. All those who think that there's a contradiction between Bible and evolution are totally wrong.
$450,000 years ago on Nibiru, a distant member of our solar system, life faced slow extinction as the planet's atmosphere eroded. Deposed by Anu, the ruler Alelu escaped in a spaceship and found refuge on Earth. He discovered that Earth had gold that could be used to protect Nibiru's atmosphere. 445,000 years ago, led by Enki, a son of Anu, the Anunnaki landed on Earth and established Eridu, also known as Earth Station 1, for extracting gold from the waters of the Persian Gulf. 430,000 years ago, as Earth's climate mellowed, more Anunnaki arrived on Earth. Among them was Enki's half-sister Ninhursag, Chief Medical Officer. 416,000 years ago, as gold production faltered, Anu arrived on Earth with Enlil, the heir apparent. It was decided to obtain the vital gold by mining it in southern Africa. Drawing lots, Enlil won command of Earth mission and Enki was relegated to Africa. On departing Earth, Anu was challenged by Alelu's grandson, Anzu. 400,000 years ago, 7 functional settlements in southern Mesopotamia were in operation. These included a spaceport in Sippar, a mission control center in Nippur, and a metallurgical center in Shuruppak. The ores arrived by ships from Africa. The refined metal was sent aloft to orbiters manned by the Igigi, then transferred to spaceships arriving periodically from Nibiru. 380,000 years ago, with the support of the Igigi, Alelu's grandson Anzu attempted to seize mastery over Earth, resulting with the Enlilites victorious in the War of the Olden Gods. 300,000 years ago, the Anunnaki who were toiling in the gold mines staged a mutiny. As a result, Enki and Ninhursag created primitive workers through genetic manipulation of ape woman, and they took over the manual chores of the Anunnaki. Enlil raided the mines and brought the primitive workers to the Eden in Mesopotamia. After gaining the ability to procreate, Homo sapiens began to multiply. 200,000 years ago, life on Earth regressed during a new glacial period. 100,000 years ago, Earth's climate warmed again. The Anunnaki, also known as the biblical Nephilim, began to marry the daughters of man, resulting in Enlil's growing annoyance. 75,000 years ago, a new ice age began. Regressive types of man still roamed the Earth, including Cro-Magnon man. 49,000 years ago, Enki and Ninhursag elevated the humans of Anunnaki parentage to rule in Shuruppak. Enlil was enraged by this and plotted mankind's demise. 13,000 years ago, realizing that the passage of Nibiru in Earth's proximity would trigger an immense tidal wave, Enlil made the Anunnaki swear to keep the impending calamity a secret from mankind. In 11,000 BC, Enki broke the oath and instructed Sasudra, also known as Noah, to build a submersible ship. The deluge swept over the Earth and the Anunnaki witnessed the total destruction from their orbiting spacecraft. Enlil agreed to grant the remnants of mankind implements and seeds, and agriculture began in the highlands. It was at this time Enki began the domestication of animals. In 10,500 BC, the descendants of Noah were allotted 3 regions. Ninurta, Enlil's foremost son, dammed the mountains and drained the rivers to make Mesopotamia habitable, and Enki reclaimed the Nile Valley. The Sinai Peninsula was retained by the Anunnaki for a post-alluvial spaceport, and a control center was established on Mount Moriah, which would become the future Jerusalem. In 9780 BC, Enki's firstborn son Marduk, also known as Ra in Egypt, divided dominion over Egypt between Osiris and Seth. In 9330 BC, Seth seized and dismembered Osiris. He then assumed sole rule over the Nile Valley. In 8970 BC, Horus avenged his father Osiris by launching the First Pyramid War. Seth escaped to Asia and seized the Sinai Peninsula and Canaan. In 8670 BC, opposed to the resulting control of all the space facilities by Enki's descendants, the Enlilites launched the Second Pyramid War. The victorious Ninurta emptied the Great Pyramid of its equipment. Ninhursag, half-sister of Enki and Enlil, convened a peace conference and the division of Earth was reaffirmed. Rule over Egypt was transferred from the Ra-Marduk dynasty to that of Thoth, and Heliopolis was built as a substitute beacon city. In 8500 BC, the Anunnaki established outposts at the gateway to the space facilities. Jericho was one of them. In 7400 BC, as the era of peace continued, the Anunnaki granted mankind new advances. It was during this time that demigods ruled over Egypt. In 3800 BC, urban civilization began in Sumer as the Anunnaki re-established there the olden cities, beginning with Eridu and Nippur. Anu came to Earth for a state visit, and a new city, Erech, was built in his honor. Anu made its temple the abode of his beloved granddaughter, Inanna, also known as Ishtar. In 3760 BC, mankind was granted kingship. The city of Kish became the first capital under the aegis of Ninurta. The calendar was initiated at Nippur and civilization blossomed out in Sumer, also known as the First Region. In 3450 BC, primacy in Sumer was transferred to Nannar, also known as Sin. Marduk proclaimed Babylon as Gateway of the Gods. The Tower of Babel incident occurred whereby the Anunnaki confused mankind's languages. Marduk's coup was frustrated and he returned to Egypt. He deposed Thoth and seized his younger brother Dumuzi, who had betrothed Inanna. Dumuzi was accidentally killed and Marduk was imprisoned alive in the Great Pyramid. He was subsequently freed through an emergency shaft and went into exile. In 3100 BC, 350 years of chaos ended with the installation of the first Egyptian pharaoh in Memphis. At this time, civilization came to the Second Region. In 2900 BC, kingship in Sumer was transferred to Erech. Inanna was given dominion over the Third Region, and the Indus Valley civilization began. In 2650 BC, Sumer's royal capital shifted among several locations and kingship deteriorated. During this time, Enlil lost patience with the unruly human multitudes. In 2371 BC, Inanna fell in love with Shurukkan, also known as King Sargon. He established a new capital city called Akkad, and the Akkadian Empire launched. In 2316 BC, in an effort to rule the four regions, Sargon removed sacred soil from Babylon. As a result, the Marduk-Inanna conflict flared up again. It ended when Nergal, Marduk's brother, journeyed from South Africa to Babylon and persuaded Marduk to leave Mesopotamia. In 2291 BC, Naram-Sin ascended the throne of Akkad. Directed by the warlike Inanna, he penetrated the Sinai Peninsula and invaded Egypt. In 2255 BC, Inanna usurped the power in Mesopotamia, and Naram-Sin defied Nippur. As a result, the Anunnaki obliterated Akkad, but Inanna escaped. Sumer and Akkad were occupied by foreign troops loyal to Enlil and Ninurta. In 2220 BC, Sumerian civilization rose to new heights under the enlightened rulers of Lagash, and Thoth helped its king Gudea build a ziggurat temple for Ninurta. In 2193 BC, Terah, Abraham's father, was born in Nippur into a priestly royal family. In 2180 BC, Egypt was divided. Followers of Ra or Marduk retained the south. The pharaohs opposed to him gained the throne of Lower Egypt. In 2130 BC, as Enlil and Ninurta were increasingly away, central authority also deteriorated in Mesopotamia. Inanna's attempts to regain the kingship for Erech did not last. In 2123 BC, Abraham was born in Nippur. In 2113 BC, Enlil entrusted the lands of Shem to Nannar. Was declared capital of the new empire. Nammu ascended the throne and was named protector of Nippur. A Nippurian priest, Terah, Abraham's father, traveled to to liaison with its royal court. In 2096 BC, Nammu died in battle, and the people consider his untimely death a betrayal by Anu and Enlil. Terah departed with his family for Haran. In 2095 BC, Solji ascended the throne of and strengthened imperial ties. As the empire thrived, Solji fell under the charms of Inanna and became her lover. He granted Larsa to the Elamites in exchange for serving as his foreign legion. In 2080 BC, the Theban princes loyal to Marduk pressed northward under Mentuhotep I, and Nebu, Marduk's son, gained adherents for his father in Western Asia. In 2055 BC, on Nannar's orders, Solji sent Elamite troops to suppress unrest in Canaanite cities. The Elamites reached the gateway to the Sinai Peninsula and its spaceport. In 2048 BC, Solji died and Marduk moved to the land of the Hittites. Abraham was ordered to southern Canaan with an elite corps of cavalrymen. In 2047 BC, Amar-Sin, the biblical Amraphel, became king of Abraham went to Egypt and stayed 5 years before returning with more troops. In 2041 BC, guided by Inanna, Amar-Sin formed a coalition of kings of the east and launched a military expedition to Canaan and the Sinai. Its leader was the Elamite Kedorlaomer. Abraham blocked their advance at the gateway to the spaceport. In 2038 BC, Shu-Sin replaced Amar-Sin on the throne of as the empire disintegrated. In 2029 BC, Ebi-Sin replaced Shu-Sin. The western provinces increasingly followed Marduk. In 2024 BC, leading his followers, Marduk marched on Sumer and enthroned himself in Babylon. Fighting spread to central Mesopotamia and Nippur's Holy of Holies was defiled. Enlil demanded punishment for Marduk and Nebu. Enki opposed such punishment, but his son Nergal sided with Enlil. As Nebu marshaled his Canaanite followers to capture the spaceport, the great Anunnaki approved the use of nuclear weapons. Nergal and Ninurta destroyed the spaceport and the errant Canaanite cities. In 2023 BC, the winds carried the radioactive cloud to Sumer. People died a terrible death. Animals perished. The water was poisoned, and the soil became barren. Sumer and its great civilization lie prostrated. Its legacy passed to Abraham's seed as he begat, at age 100, a legitimate heir named Isaac. The preceding chronology will no doubt appear incomplete to the average viewer in the absence of a proper context. So, what is the proper context? Well, our longtime viewers already know that answer. It is the Earth Chronicles book series by Zecharia Sitchin. Sitchin spent several decades researching, translating, and interpreting ancient Sumerian, Akkadian, and Babylonian texts and tablets which spanned thousands of years before the first book of the Bible was ever written. He determined that the Anunnaki were instrumental in the creation of modern man some 300 to 250,000 years ago and were thereafter extensively involved in mankind's history during the pre-Christian eras. His sources include the Epic of Gilgamesh, the Atrahasis epic, the Era epic, and the Enuma Elish, to name a few. Portions of the book of Genesis, as just one example, can best be interpreted in a consistent manner by incorporating the ancient Sumerian description of the Anunnaki. Many of our viewers have consistently asked the same question for several years now. What happened to the Anunnaki after the timeline provided by Sitchin? Well, a great place to begin in answering that question is the biblical Old Testament. Simply picking up the story at the birth of Isaac will provide an immense insight as to how the bloodline progressed. Nevertheless, such research is tedious, and that fact serves as the archive's impetus for a rather ambitious production that will explain these puzzle pieces leading up to our current time period. For those viewers who would like to get a head start, the archive suggests reviewing the actual source material that Sitchin himself referenced in order to flesh out the Anunnaki chronology.